I was falsely accused of cheating by the school's heartthrob, and on my birthday my childhood friend brought him to reconcile. She said, "We've been classmates, there's no need to hold a grudge." And truly, there was no need, so I threw away her birthday gift, destroyed everything related to her, and completely withdrew from her world. I intended to have nothing more to do with her. Yet years later, at a business banquet, she spotted me in the crowd instantly. My childhood friend, once adored by everyone, stood before me with tears in her eyes and asked, "Was it fun, avoiding me for 7 whole years?" During the break, the classroom entrance was packed with people craning their necks to look inside. In just one break, the news that Santiago from Class 3 had falsely accused a classmate of cheating had spread across the entire school. Santiago stood by the desk with a stern expression, the desk kicked into a crooked angle. People surrounded him, trying to comfort him, but their eyes kept drifting toward me. I was the classmate who had been falsely accused. Santiago's the class president. Maybe he misjudged the situation for the sake of order. Everyone makes mistakes, it's just a misunderstanding, not something unforgivable, right? As soon as someone said that, the others nodded, glancing at me. They were all waiting for me to step up and comfort Santiago. Feeling their expectant gazes, my heart sank. The same familiar sense of isolation welled up again. Our school divided classes by academic performance. Class 3 was the top class, and I had worked hard to get in. Santiago had always had a good reputation. Handsome, warm-hearted, the school heartthrob. Everyone pretended to be united, but when something real happened, not one person stood up for someone like me, who had transferred in halfway through. I bit my lip, unwilling to give in. Santiago owes me an apology. They wanted to say more, but Santiago suddenly looked up. His face was dark, his tone unbearably harsh. "Fine, it was my fault. I shouldn't have said anything for the sake of the class and discipline. I'm sorry. Is that enough, Bruno?" His words dripped with reluctance. Before I could reply, he stood up and walked out. Then a burst of exclamations erupted from outside. Feeling that something was wrong, I followed him out and saw him surrounded by people, bent over, holding his ankle, beads of sweat forming on his forehead, his face pale. Voices filled my ears. His parents just had a car accident. He's been emotionally unstable. Does he really need to be pushed this far? Is an apology really that important? The area around me cleared, leaving me standing there confused. When I looked up, I met Julieta's gaze. She had just come out of the office. Her beautiful eyes were usually cold toward others, but with me there was always warmth. Yet now, those eyes held obvious reproach. I instantly understood. Julieta blamed me too. Santiago had lost his footing and stumbled on the stairs earlier. Julieta immediately helped him to the infirmary. With his arm on her shoulder, he looked at me coldly, mockery in his eyes. It felt like he could see right through me, through my feelings for Julieta. I was convinced the accusation had been intentional. When Julieta returned from the infirmary, she came to find me. The evening breeze blew through the ends of her hair as she leaned on the railing and looked at me. "Is it really that important to you?" Just a single word. Her tone was calm, nothing unusual, but I could feel it. She was blaming me like everyone else. A lump formed in my throat, making me speechless. After a long pause, I lowered my eyes and forced a bitter smile. "I don't understand. How did his act of playing the victim turn me into the one who did something wrong?" Julieta froze for a moment. Maybe my smile was too bitter. Her expression softened slightly. "What act? He really hurt his ankle. And I never said you were wrong." She looked away. "I just think there's no need to make a big deal out of it." The school bell rang sharply, each chime sinking my heart further. I stared at her, feeling an inexplicable sense of betrayal. Was it really about not making a big deal out of it, or was it something else? By the time school ended, Julieta was gone. Santiago's seat was empty too. Someone told me Julieta had something to do and that I should go home alone. I just nodded, unable to describe my emotions. On the way home, groups of students walked together laughing. I rode my bike with my head lowered, and memories started surfacing. Our old neighborhood, where everyone knew Julieta even though she acted cold, was fiercely protective. Whenever I got into an argument, She rushed to my side without even knowing what happened. I lost my parents young and grew up with my grandmother. Julieta always followed me around, calling me Big Brother. Later she grew awkward, stopped using it, and called me Bruno Lou instead. I would glance at her lazily while carrying her bag. "Your wings have hardened. Now you dare call me by my name?" Caught off guard, she'd lower her head and mumble, "What Big Brother? You're only a few days older." Then she'd puff up her cheeks defiantly. "I'll just call you Bruno. Bruno, Bruno, Bruno." She thought I would scold her like before and ran away, but I didn't. I stood there for a while and sighed. All right. I can't control you anymore." Then I chuckled. Just as well. I never liked being called Big Brother. When I came back to my senses, the sky had darkened. The distance between school and home wasn't far, but I must have turned around 108 times. Yet on the dim path, there was never a familiar figure in sight. The next day, Julieta waited for me to walk to school as usual. Nothing seemed to have changed. But on the way, I casually asked why she had returned late yesterday. She brushed it off, saying something came up, giving no details. I found out the reason soon enough. When I entered the classroom, I saw Santiago look up and smile at her. "Good morning, Julieta. And thanks for walking me home yesterday." I froze. The smile on his handsome face had never irritated me so much. I'd heard before transferring that Santiago and Julieta were close. I wanted to act indifferent, but I couldn't. I cared. A lot. The something she mentioned was walking Santiago home. I pressed my lips together, anger rising. I didn't speak to her all day. During break, Santiago came to my desk and put a cup of water down. I turned my head, but before I could say anything, a shattering sound rang out. Suddenly Santiago shouted, and everyone turned to look. Water splashed everywhere, the cup broken on the floor. His face darkened as he stared at it. "I just wanted to apologize for the other day, man." He sighed helplessly. "Let's just say I didn't hold it properly." But the more he explained, the more people stared at me. I knew that look too well. It suddenly clicked. It was the same trick as before. I hated being falsely accused more than anything. In that brief pause as he pretended helplessness, I grabbed him and started dragging him toward the teacher's office. "Stop pretending. I didn't even touch the cup. Let's go check the security footage." Santiago froze, his face turning pale. He refused to go, causing a scene. Then someone suddenly held me back. "That's enough." I frowned and looked down. It was Julieta. It felt like ice water had been poured over me. She hadn't spoken to me all day, and the first words she said were to defend Santiago. I knew he was doing everything because of her. She looked up at me with impatience and helplessness. "Don't make a scene. It's almost time for class." There it was again, her dismissive tone. Just a few words, and she stood on Santiago's side. My anger, simmering since last night, burst out. My expression darkened, and I shoved her slightly. "Julieta, do you think this is funny? Why should I keep letting him slander me? Are you going to say it's unnecessary again? Maybe it doesn't matter to you, but it matters a lot to me." My sudden outburst stunned her. She stared at me as if she hadn't expected it. After a moment, she blinked and whispered, "That's not what I meant." I insisted on checking the footage, but Santiago tried to stop me. I dropped it by accident. No need to bother the teacher over something so trivial. Given everything, it was obvious the problem wasn't with me. Even the people who defended him before stayed quiet. I sat back down, irritated. Julieta handed me a bottle of cold water, eyes lowered. "Bruno, that's not what I meant." I ignored her. For the next few days, she stayed close. We rarely fought. But after school one day, I turned to walk away, and she finally couldn't take it. She grabbed my sleeve. Her hand was cold, and there was a new expensive watch on her wrist, the same one I had looked at online a few times, far beyond what I could afford. Even for someone from a well-off family like her, it wasn't something she'd casually buy. I froze, staring at her as she looked up. "Please don't be mad at me, okay? I instinctively tried to remove the watch to hand it back, but she stopped me. I wanted to give it to you anyway. It's just early for your birthday. I kept a stern face, but my anger faded. When I got home, I cursed myself for being spineless. Then the phone rang. My aunt asked if I decided about transferring schools and when I planned to move. I stared at the watch and quietly said, I want to stay a little longer. Since my grandmother passed, the only reason I stayed was Julieta. For days she didn't mention Santiago. I thought he was out of the picture. But on my birthday, I heard that she'd been hanging out with him every day after school, taking walks. My heart sank instantly. Thunder rumbled across the sky. It poured heavily on my birthday. Julieta was supposed to pick up the cake, but said something came up and told me to get it instead. I wanted to ask for details, but she hung up quickly. I convinced myself I could just ask her in person. After picking up the cake, I stepped outside into even heavier rain. My car had broken down too. The party venue wasn't far, so I held an umbrella in one hand and the cake in the other and hurried there, getting soaked anyway. It was rare for her to ask me to get my own birthday cake. She must have had something important to do. I kept repeating that to myself, until I reached the door. Inside, I heard Santiago's voice. I froze. His voice drifted out with a hint of laughter. Thanks to our Julie for agreeing to pick me up in this heavy rain. The door was slightly open. I lifted my gaze numbly and saw everyone was already there, even unfamiliar faces. And in the crowd was the last person I wanted to see. It wasn't my imagination. Santiago was really there. Someone noticed me, called out, and suddenly everyone turned. My drenched appearance was completely exposed, and the room fell into awkward silence. Santiago turned too. He stood beside Julieta, clean and dry, in stark contrast to me. Water dripped from my sleeves as I held the cake, feeling like a clown with nowhere to hide. I had never felt so humiliated. Rage churned in my chest as I stared at Julieta and gritted my teeth. Why is Santiago here? She hadn't expected me to be in such a state, and her expression changed instantly. My fury felt like it would explode with one more word from her. I stared at Julieta without moving, repeating my question, Why is Santiago here? Have you been with him all these days? Did you come here with him today too? Santiago had arrived perfectly dry, and on my birthday I was the laughingstock, drenched and humiliated in front of everyone. Julieta knew how much I disliked Santiago. I had said it more than once. I didn't want to see Santiago anymore. Why did it have to be today? Why did it have to be when I was at my lowest? Julieta stood there stunned. She hurriedly tried to explain. Santiago said he wanted to formally apologize to you today, and he invited a lot of people to witness it. He even prepared a birthday gift, so I thought... Julieta suddenly grabbed my wrist tightly. I wanted to clear up the misunderstanding today. Santiago is really a good guy. There's no need to hold a grudge. No need. There it was again. No need. Indeed, there was no need. I looked at Julieta silently as she pried her fingers off my wrist. Then I removed the watch from my wrist and tossed it to her. This time I didn't press her with questions or say anything at all. Something I had held onto for so long suddenly didn't seem worth it anymore. The day I left, I didn't tell Julieta. It was just an ordinary afternoon when I put a definitive end to things with her. My aunt helped me with the transfer paperwork. She mentioned that when my name was brought up, a girl suddenly rushed out of class, choking back tears as she repeatedly asked where I had transferred to. My aunt asked if she was a good friend. I shook my head and smiled. Not anymore. My aunt didn't tell Julieta. Julieta wouldn't be able to find me. Bruno, how can you be so relaxed? Aren't you nervous? The boss said tonight's banquet is going to be packed with all the big names in the industry. My colleague David snapped me back to reality. The banquet hall before me was lively, brilliantly lit, and incredibly luxurious. 7 years had passed since I transferred schools. After transferring, I threw myself completely into my studies with no distractions. I exceeded expectations in the college entrance exams, and after graduating from university, I smoothly entered this company. Snapping out of my thoughts, I paused for a second. Don't worry, there's nothing for small fry like us to stress over. You're calling yourself a small fry? You climbed to a position in 3 years that most people can't reach in 10. Just as he finished, a sudden commotion arose at the front of the hall. In the midst of it, I seemed to catch a few mentions of Miss Lou. David swallowed nervously beside me. Miss Lou? She's a rich heiress. Not only is her family wealthy, but she's also running her own company successfully. And she's here. I slowly furrowed my brows. Something clicked in my mind. I looked up and saw a beautiful figure surrounded by people. The simple yet elegant custom-made dress she wore was clearly expensive at a glance. That profile was overwhelmingly familiar. Bruno. A voice shattered all my thoughts. There were many people around her trying to engage in conversation, but her gaze pierced through the crowd and locked onto me. In front of everyone she even started walking toward me, step by step. Was it fun? Julieta stared at me, her eyes red. Avoiding me for these entire 7 years. The hall fell silent and almost every gaze fixed on me. There were whispers, people sizing me up, trying to figure out how someone like me, a small-time employee, could be connected to Julieta. I looked down helplessly and then met Julieta's gaze. She seemed to have changed over the years, yet somehow hadn't changed at all. Gone was the youthful innocence. After years of navigating society, she now exuded an aura that made her hard to approach. The Julieta of today was someone most people would go out of their way to flatter. I took a step back, increasing the distance between us, and quietly observed her. After all these years, I felt the same as I did 7 years ago. There wasn't much I wanted to say. Perhaps my retreat was too obvious, because Julieta suddenly froze in place. She looked up at me, her voice choking. "Are you still going to avoid me?" The boss stood not far away, blinking rapidly as if pressing a camera shutter, his hints painfully clear. Over the years I had dealt with many people, and saying the right words for the occasion had become second nature. But I didn't want to play along in front of Julieta. I simply asked her, "What status do you have that makes you worth avoiding?" At my words, many faces in the room changed. Julieta's expression paled slightly. "What status?" she repeated, staring at me with a mix of unwillingness and hurt. She wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and softly asked, "Bruno, do you want me to help you remember?" "Remember what?" I asked. "Remember how she so clearly sided with Santiago that year? Or remember that miserable birthday in the pouring rain?" The feelings of humiliation and frustration that I had buried deep inside began to resurface. Suppressing my emotions, I let out a couple of cold laughs and spoke with a trace of bitterness. "Julieta." I looked up at her genuinely asking, "And who exactly are you to me?" Julieta had likely been riding high on her successes over the years, elevated by those around her. She frowned, anger evident in her eyes. Those eyes glared at me fiercely, but when she spoke her voice was hoarse. "Say that again." The atmosphere grew tense. The boss seized the moment, stepping in front of me and discreetly pushing me out of the way. The cold wind outside cooled my emotions. I hadn't expected to still get angry because of Julieta. David caught up to me, handing me a bottle of water and speaking nervously, "Miss Lou just now looked really scary." "How do you know her?" The cool sensation of the water sliding down my throat only added to my exhaustion. "That's it for tonight. I'm heading back. Let the boss know for me." I had just reached the parking lot when a message from David popped up. "You're not here," and Miss Lou left without looking back. "Could she be coming after you?" My brow furrowed slightly. From behind I could faintly hear the hurried click of high heels against the ground. Julieta had caught up. She was out of breath from running, her chest heaving as she looked up at me feeling wronged. "How could you leave without saying anything? Are you planning to disappear quietly again?" I stared at her silently with no intention of speaking. But my calm demeanor seemed to ignite something in Julieta. Her emotions began to crumble. "You've been avoiding me for 7 years, and you have nothing to say to me?" I corrected her. "I wasn't avoiding you." "Then why did you leave without a word? Why did you transfer schools without telling me? If I hadn't come looking for you, were you really planning to never see me again?" Leaning against the car, I let out a laugh. Who even remembers such old and trivial matters? That one sentence seemed to pierce Julieta deeply. She stared at me, and tears suddenly welled up in her eyes. "Don't remember? Bruno, who gave you the right to forget?" Her words hit hard like a heavy blow, landing squarely on the heart of the 17-year-old Bruno. I forced a cold laugh from my throat, locking eyes with Julieta. "And who gave me the reason to remember?" "Julieta, who do you think you are? Why should I remember those times of utter humiliation and disgrace? I'm no one, of course." Julieta's face turned pale as she cried, "But I won't let you forget." Not wanting to continue this conversation, I turned to leave, but Julieta blocked my way. I thought I could control my emotions. But seeing Julieta in this self-righteous state, I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. Julieta looked up at me, stubborn and hurt. "Do you know how long I've been searching for you? Do you know how happy I was to see you today?" She didn't finish before a loud crashing sound echoed in the quiet parking lot. I turned toward the noise and saw Santiago in the distance, though I hadn't noticed when he arrived. Something had shattered on the ground. Santiago stood frozen, staring straight at us, still holding Julieta's coat. Santiago had been by Julieta's side all these years. The two of them attended the same university, and after graduation Santiago joined Julieta's company. This time Julieta hadn't brought him along. He came on his own, wanting to surprise her. He stared at Julieta, his face dark with anger. His current expression reminded me so much of the Santiago from years ago. I looked back at Julieta and let out a sarcastic laugh. The irony was too clear, and Julieta's face turned completely white. Santiago approached, his eyes filled with irritation and disdain as he forced a smile and greeted me. "Long time no see, Bruno. You left school without saying a word back then, making it impossible for me to properly apologize." As he spoke, he naturally hooked his arm around Julieta's, clearly staking his claim, just like before. It seemed Santiago hadn't changed at all over the years. But this time, before I could respond, Julieta suddenly pulled her arm away. She looked at Santiago, her voice soft as she asked, "Santiago, didn't I tell you that if you wanted to stay in the company you should stop saying things you shouldn't?" At her words, Santiago's face turned as white as a sheet, but he still reached out to grab Julieta's wrist. "Julie, are you still mad about last time? I won't do it again. Let's not make a scene. We can talk about it when we get back, okay?" He was terrified that Julieta might say something in front of me. Julieta distanced herself from him, then looked up at me and explained, "Something happened years ago and Santiago saved my family, so my mother arranged for him to join the company. Enough," Santiago suddenly interrupted, his voice low and strained. "Don't treat me like this. Let's go back, all right?" Julieta ignored him and finished her sentence, "Santiago and I were never in a relationship." Julieta's explanation and Santiago's irritated voice swirled in my mind. The chaotic reunion scene gave me a headache. They seemed to be saying a lot, but I didn't really take any of it in. All I remember is that when my headache got worse and I tried to leave, Julieta grabbed my wrist. Her fingers gripped tightly. Julieta said that all these years she had never forgotten me. She then asked me again, what could she do to earn my forgiveness? It was strange. The person I didn't care about back then, how did she end up so deeply invested 7 years later? I couldn't figure it out, and I didn't want to. I pried her hand off and silently mouthed 3 words in front of her, "Stop pretending." After putting some distance between us, I got in my car and drove away without looking back. I didn't want to have anything more to do with them. But early the next morning the company group chat was buzzing. One explosive message after another popped up. "Wow, whose Porsche is parked by the company entrance? Look at that license plate starting with 777. I saw the owner. She's stunning, but her presence is kind of intimidating. Didn't dare to look twice." The last time the group chat was this lively was when someone's wife publicly confronted a mistress. I sat up abruptly, my sleepiness gone, staring at the screen. A name was on the tip of my tongue. When I got to the company, the Porsche was still parked prominently outside. A lot of people were sneaking glances and gossiping. The owner didn't seem to mind being the center of attention. She leaned against the car, her head down, lost in thought. That familiar profile almost confirmed it for me at first glance. Julieta. As if sensing something, Julieta looked up sharply. She stared at me quietly, expressionless. But usually this kind of stance meant she wasn't going to let things go easily. She was angry that I had walked away without looking back last night, so she showed up at the company first thing to confront me. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Talk about what?" I found it amusing. "What is there left to talk about between us?" "A lot," Julieta said seriously, looking at me. "There's so much I've wanted to say to you over the years." "And what if I say I don't want to hear it?" Julieta looked at me silently for 2 seconds. "You should know patience is something I have in abundance. Suit yourself." I looked away and walked into the company without another word. Julieta stayed downstairs the entire time. David and the new female intern kept glancing out the window. "Isn't that Miss Lou? Has she gone crazy? She's not even leaving in the rain." The intern Camila leaned over sweetly. "Is she really here for Bruno? She must have done something to make him mad." David took a sip of his coffee. "And you would know." Camila replied with an air of understanding. "Of course. Bruno has such a good temper. He rarely refuses anyone. Women can be so wicked." David gave her a strange look. "Aren't you a woman? How could I count on you?" Camila exclaimed. "I would never make Bruno mad. I only feel sorry for him." I glanced outside where the rain was now falling steadily. The rain was especially cold in late autumn. Julieta stood under an umbrella, her eyes fixed on the building. She stood there alone. I couldn't see her expression clearly, but I could easily imagine it. Always cold, indifferent, with that stubborn streak. It was the same look Julieta used to have whenever she tried to cheer me up after making me upset. Once she set her mind on something, few people could change it. After all these years, Julieta seemed even more persistent than before. I looked away and didn't say anything. It wasn't until night had fully fallen and everyone had left the office that I glanced down after finishing my overtime. Julieta was still there. I shut down my computer and left through the back door. That night David started a group chat and, together with Camila, they went back and forth, determined to pry open the story between me and Julieta. I was forced to stay up late. After the conversation, while brushing my teeth, the chat suddenly blew up with 999 plus messages, every one of them filled with their so-called concerned comments about Julieta. Before bed, Camila sent me a private message. "Bruno, I gave Julieta a piece of my mind." How did I do? Camila always liked to talk big, so I didn't think much of it. I just told her to get some sleep. The next day, Julieta still hadn't left. She was determined to stay and play hardball. I glanced over and then slipped into the company through the back door. Not long after I got in, a sudden commotion broke out inside the company. Even the boss was alerted. David came back looking conflicted. "Julieta, she's something else." I frowned. "What did she do?" "She probably wants to add you on WeChat." "Ignore it." Of course I ignored it. David raised his hand and pointed downstairs. But plenty of others didn't. Under my stare, David finally explained. "Anyone who gives her your WeChat gets a 100,000 yuan reward." The next second, my phone vibrated. A message popped up from a colleague in the adjacent department. "Sorry Bruno, but she offered too much." Then another friend request. "It's Julieta." I pinched the bridge of my nose, the headache already forming. Before I could even process any of it, another burst of commotion swept through the building. It felt like the company had used up 3 years' worth of shock in just a few days. A flashy sports car had provocatively parked right in front of Julieta's Porsche. People were leaning out of windows to watch, gossip swirling instantly. "Who's that now?" "No idea." "Hey, they're getting out of the car." "Wait, why does that person look familiar? Isn't that Bruno's new intern?" "The heiress." My brow furrowed. Looking closely, sure enough, it was Camila. Camila stepped out, took off her sunglasses, gave Julieta a once-over, sneered, and flipped her off. She mouthed something I couldn't hear, but it definitely wasn't nice. I sighed, picked up my phone, and headed downstairs. By the time I got down there, the two of them were already at each other's throats. I knew very well that Julieta had a bad temper. After years of living in luxury, there was no way she'd tolerate some university student provoking her. Camila had a large bruised cut on the corner of her mouth. She wiped it gently, looked down at me, and said sweetly, "Bruno, I'm fine." Even if she hit me first, I fought back. Camila hadn't been in the company long, and she was always protective of her face. I knew she was standing up for me, but I didn't expect it to escalate like this. Frustration washed over me suddenly, and I turned to Julieta, my voice cold. "Have you had enough?" Even if Camila said something, did it really warrant hitting her first? Julieta, who had been stunned silent, slowly lifted her head. She looked more disheveled than I had ever seen her. Her face didn't look much better than Camila's, probably worse. But she didn't seem to care about her injuries. Her pale face was filled with shock, hurt, and disbelief. I was the one who hit first. Beside me, Camila let out a soft ouch. "Don't be mad, Bruno. It's just a little cut. It'll heal in a few days. It doesn't hurt. Let's head back to the company." As I turned to leave, Julieta suddenly grabbed my wrist. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at me stubbornly. "So you're just going to take her word for it without even asking me, and assume I hit her first?" I shook off her hand. "If you want to talk, we can do it after work." Camila turned around and smirked at Julieta. Julieta stayed until the end of the workday. She just stood there with her bruised face, refusing any treatment, waiting stubbornly until evening. I left the company with Camila. Julieta hurried over, trying to speak, but Camila let out another little ouch. She reached for me. "Bruno, my hand hurts. I don't think I can drive." Seeing her hand made Julieta's face sting instantly. Then, as if she realized something, she stepped forward, looking at me. "You promised we would talk." Camila lowered her eyes. "I can manage the pain. If you have something to do, it's okay, you don't need to take me home." I looked at Camila. "I'll take you home first." Julieta froze, staring at me in shock. The light in her eyes dimmed little by little. On the way, Camila confessed. "Bruno, it was actually me who hit first. She treated you that way before. Now it's her turn to know what it feels like not to be trusted." "I understand," I told her. "But don't use this method again. It's a shame to hurt that face." She paused, then smiled, her eyes curving. "All right." By the time I got back, the sky was already dark, and Julieta was still standing there in the dim light, alone. For some reason, seeing her like that reminded me of an abandoned animal. But Julieta had never belonged to me. I looked at her. "After all this, let's clear the air. Say whatever you need to say. It wasn't me who hit first today." Julieta hesitated for a moment before blurting out the words. I hadn't expected her to still be stuck on this. "That doesn't matter. Get to the point." "It does matter," Julieta insisted, staring straight at me. "Bruno, you never used to be so biased." Those words, "used to be," hung in the air. So long ago. "People change over time," I said. "Besides, now, to me, Camila isn't someone else. You are." The sky was almost fully dark, the night cold. Julieta stood there repeating the words softly, as if tasting something bitter. "Someone else." She lowered her eyes and forced a smile. When she spoke again, her voice trembled. "A few days before your birthday, after school, I was with Santiago because he kept asking me to help him apologize to you. I knew you didn't like seeing him, so I didn't tell you. On your birthday, Santiago said he bought a gift and invited a lot of people. He said he wanted to apologize sincerely. So I helped him. All these years, I never had anything to do with Santiago." After finishing her explanation, Julieta looked up. Her eyes met mine, reflecting me clearly. She waited quietly for my response. "Okay. I understand," I said, tightening my coat. "Is that all? Then let's go home. It's cold." Julieta looked at me, her eyes suddenly filling with tears. "So you left without a word for all this time, and you have nothing to say to me?" It was ironic. Everything Julieta mentioned, I'd thought about them countless late nights after transferring schools. How could someone so close to me suddenly take the side of a guy she barely knew? I never understood. And I couldn't forget Julieta. Her presence seeped into every part of my life. I told myself again and again that it was all in the past. And now, I finally got this weak, meaningless explanation. "No," I said. "You've already explained everything, Julieta. Let's end this here." "I don't want to," Julieta cried. She stepped forward and threw herself into my arms. Her fingers clenched tightly as she sobbed. "Bruno," she choked, "after you transferred, I searched for you for so long. That day, I didn't expect the rain to be so heavy. All these years, I kept thinking, if only I hadn't made you pick up the cake, if only I hadn't agreed to Santiago's request. But you left so quickly, you didn't give me a chance to explain." "Was it me who didn't give you a chance, Julieta?" I asked. "Time and again, when did you not side with Santiago? Yes, they were small things, but you've always been smart. Could you really not tell whether Santiago was lying?" "I'm sorry. It won't happen again. Please don't avoid me anymore." Her voice cracked. "That year I searched for you in so many cities, but I could never find you." The cold wind seeped into my chest. I had never imagined that someone as proud as Julieta could cry so miserably. She always used to follow me everywhere, knowing I would take care of all the trouble she caused. I never thought there would come a day when we'd part ways. But reality taught me that relying too much on someone eventually leads to a painful fall. I fell, and it hurt. A lot. I gently pushed her away and whispered, "This is the end, Julieta. Don't come looking for me anymore." Her eyes turned red, her face pale, her voice dry and strained. I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard her faint, trembling voice, filled with pain. "I can't." After that, her Portia never showed up near the company again. But every morning, a florist delivered fresh flowers. "Mr. Liu, these flowers were freshly picked. May you have a pleasant day." At noon, someone brought lunch made specifically for me. David came over. "Isn't this from our favorite restaurant? It's insanely expensive." The restaurant staff smiled. "Mr. Liu is one of our top VIPs. If you have any favorite ingredients, feel free to tell us any time." And it wasn't just this restaurant. Every place I'd visited had me listed as a VIP. Even the mortgage on my house had been paid off in advance. I didn't have to think hard to know who did it. "Julieta," David said, speechless. "She's really rich." I tried contacting her several times to return the money. Every time, Julieta sent it back. She said it was compensation for her guilt. The next time I saw her was at the company's team-building camping trip. The boss mentioned a rare meteor shower that would be visible from where we were. During the trip, David and Camila talked non-stop, making my ears ache. When we finally arrived, things quieted down. But of course, I spotted Julieta. She stood not far away, the wind brushing against her, her usual cold, aloof demeanor back in place, the version of her that kept everyone at a distance. The Julieta who cried with red eyes felt unreal. She looked at me from a distance and smiled softly. "What a coincidence!" Camila, grilling skewers, sneered. "Miss Liu, that's a funny joke. Your company is miles away from here." "True," Julieta said, "but the branch office is nearby." "When did you open a branch here?" "Just now," Julieta replied calmly. Camila rolled her eyes. "Ridiculous." But Julieta wasn't joking. Her branch really was being established nearby. Saying she brought employees for team building was a stretch, though. Among her group, I noticed Santiago. But he seemed more subdued, only staring at Julieta without approaching. Julieta came over to talk with the boss. He had always wanted to collaborate with her company, so he didn't turn her away. Their conversation drifted to the food she brought. Julieta had brought twice as much as our company. Julieta seized the chance. "Why don't we join forces? It'll be more lively." The boss happily agreed. Camila scoffed. "Julieta is obviously here for Bruno." The boss knocked her on the head. "You think I don't know? It's free stuff, why not take advantage?" Camila handed him a burnt skewer. "Isn't that selling out?" The boss sighed. "Have you not noticed? Bruno has already moved on." The two companies mingled. No matter what I was doing, Julieta would come over to help. She took the skewers from me, the oil sizzling. "How have you been lately?" she asked. "Everything's been fine." "That's good." While I talked to her, I could feel Santiago's gaze burning into me. Later, he approached, pretending to talk. I thought he'd changed, until hot soup spilled on his hand, just like 7 years ago. That's when I realized he hadn't grown at all. The noise drew everyone's attention. People from both companies stared awkwardly. Santiago probably wanted to repeat his old trick, trying to make things difficult for me. It had worked before. I never really fit in at Class 3. But now, before I could speak, David and Camila rushed in. "Seriously? You still haven't had enough. Come on, if you're going to frame someone, at least pick the right setting. This is our company's turf. Do you really think you can mess with Bruno? And even if Bruno did do it, you probably deserved it." Voices surrounded him. Nothing went the way he planned. Santiago froze, speechless. His face darkened and he turned to look at his own company. But Julieta stepped in front of him. Her voice was icy. "Santiago, when we get back to the office, submit your resignation and move to another city." The moment she said that, no one else dared speak for him. All the color drained from his face. I picked up a bottle of cold water nearby and poured it over his head. The loud splash drenched him completely. Santiago shivered, staring at me with disbelief. I looked at him and smiled. This time, it really was me. "You've been dying for me to pour something on you, so how could I not oblige?" After a full day of cold wind, we still didn't get to see the meteor shower. When Julieta went to get a scarf, the darkness around us was too heavy, and she twisted her ankle after missing a step. She sat on the ground, face pale. By the time I realized what happened, Julieta had already grabbed my wrist. The mountain path was too rough for cars, and Julieta's voice trembled with pain as she said, "It hurt so much, please help me." I sighed and finally carried her down the mountain. The night air was cold, and she was hurting so badly that a thin layer of sweat gathered on her forehead. As she clung to my back, she asked if she was too heavy. Her voice shook with the same sadness and hurt as that night years ago, and for a moment it overlapped with the voice of the younger Julieta, leaving me dazed. I told her, "Not really." Trying to distract herself from the pain, Julieta talked about many things. She brought up a lot from our childhood, things I remembered and things I didn't. She asked if I remembered the watch she had given me before my birthday. I had never asked how she knew I liked that watch. Julieta laughed softly and said she noticed the first moment I looked at it, and she had planned to get it for a long time. She said that the watch was still kept carefully in her drawer. A lump formed in my throat, and I kept my eyes on the dark path ahead, saying nothing. Julieta went on, telling me that on my birthday, right after I walked into the rain without looking back, she was about to chase after me when she got a phone call, an emergency at home. She rushed back and was overwhelmed with problems for the next few days. She had planned to find me and talk things over as soon as she was done. Back then, she wouldn't have done anything to make me angry, no matter what I said. But by the time she was finally free, I had already disappeared. Her calls were blocked, and suddenly she had no way to reach me. She thought I was throwing a tantrum, so she bought a cake and waited outside my house for a whole day and night. The cake melted into a mess, but the door never opened. Then one day she saw someone at school handling my transfer paperwork. Julieta's mind went blank, and she realized something was seriously wrong. She ran out and begged my aunt repeatedly, but in the end my aunt never told her the exact address. Julieta let out a soft, bitter laugh as she talked about this. Her voice was layered with resentment and guilt. She said I had transferred schools without saying a word, not even a goodbye. I kept my eyes lowered, unsure what to say, and tried to change the subject just like she had done earlier. I said, "Stop making me a VIP everywhere, and don't pay off my mortgage. I'll pay you back slowly." Julieta suddenly fell silent. After a long pause, she asked in a rough voice, "Do you really not want to have anything to do with me?" I replied, "I don't want to owe anyone. The Liu family took care of me a lot back then. Let's call it even, no one owes anyone anything." Julieta shook her head and said she didn't want that. The cold wind howled in my ears, and I could hear her voice trembling again. I sighed, and after a moment of silence, I told her, "In a little while I'll be leaving this city to head up the branch office." Still on my back, Julieta suddenly stiffened. The wind was too cold. She drew in a sharp breath, and tears began falling again. Her voice mixed with the wind, each word carried by deep, uneven breaths as she asked, "You're leaving again?" I quietly answered, "Mm." After that, Julieta didn't say another word. She stayed silent, no longer speaking, just wiping away her tears. I took her to the hospital and handled everything from start to finish. The hospital room was quiet enough that only our breathing could be heard. Julieta lay on the bed, staring at me without moving, as if trying to memorize my face. After what felt like a long time, she finally spoke. She smiled as she asked, "When will you come back?" But the smile was painfully forced. I said, "Who knows? Maybe I will. If things go well, maybe I'll never come back." Julieta's eyelashes trembled. Her eyes were filled with a kind of sadness I had never seen before. "Then, will we ever see each other again?" she asked. I looked out the window and shook my head slightly. "Probably not." As soon as the words left my mouth, the light in her eyes was completely swallowed by darkness. She lowered her head and cried for a long, long time. Eventually, she managed to choke out a faint, "Okay." The day I left the city, it snowed. The air was sharp with cold. I knew Julieta was somewhere not far behind me. Dependence is a dangerous thing. I had fallen once and gotten badly hurt. When I chose to leave back then, I never intended for things to return to how they used to be. The idea of fixing a broken mirror is far too unrealistic. I would never throw myself back into the downpour of my teenage years. Holding my suitcase, I walked forward step by step. I never looked back.